have you ever, stopped to really consider that every physical experience you've ever had, every massive emotional peak, every minor little injury from a decade ago, even your most mundane daily habits might be secretly archived right now in your muscles and your posture?
Yeah, it is a really profound idea, and it completely challenges our basic assumptions, right?
Yeah.
Because we tend to think of our memories as existing purely in our minds,
Right.
like, files on a hard drive that are tucked safely away in our brains. But what if the body itself is the hard drive?
Let's expand on that hard drive idea for a second, because if my brain is the processor, are we saying my actual muscle tissue is storing data?
Yes, essentially.
Like, is a sprained ankle from college acting like a fragmented file that is secretly taking up background processing power and just slowing down my entire operating system?
That is actually a highly accurate way to look at it. The physical trauma isn't just a memory of an event. It actively alters the machine's ongoing performance.
Wow. Okay, well, that is exactly the phenomena we are exploring today. In this deep dive, we are looking at a really fascinating presentation. It's titled Pina Bausch, the Cartographer of Bodily Memory.
Right.
And this is presented by Dr. Christophe Delong and Kinexa Formation. They present it as an exploration of human movement. So our mission today is to dive into this really unexpected and, frankly, a profound intersection.
It really is.
We're going to look at how the artistic methods of a legendary avant-garde dance choreographer have sort of collided with the cutting edge of modern sports biomechanics.
And it really will challenge how you view your own body, because if we follow the clinical and artistic logic of this source material, your body is not just a physical vessel that carries your brain from point A to point B.
Yeah.
It is a living archive.
Yeah.
Every single thing that has ever happened to you leaves a permanent physical trace.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we should start with the artistic foundation of this whole concept. My immediate thought is, how on earth did an avant-garde dancer from the 1970s unlock a fundamental truth about human biomechanics?
Decades before sports scientists had the data to back it up.
Exactly. Like, how did she know?
Well, to understand that, we have to look at the environment Pina Bausch was reacting against. She lived from 1940 to 2009, and she initiated this radical departure from everything traditional dance was supposed to be.
Okay.
Up until that point in the dance world, choreography was largely, well, dictatorial.
Meaning the choreographer just told everyone what to do.
Right. The choreographer created a series of beautiful, highly complex steps, and the dancers essentially functioned as specialized athletes trying to replicate those exact steps as perfectly as possible.
Wait, I need to push back on that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because isn't dance entirely about precise choreography and how you move?
I mean, traditionally, yes.
It's like you hit your mark, you point your toes, you execute the turn. Traditional dance feels like painting by numbers. You are given the exact colors and the exact lines to fill in to create the picture the director wants.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
But Bausch's method sounds like handing the dancers a totally blank canvas and asking them to paint with their deepest secrets.
That is exactly what she did, and it's why she was so revolutionary. Pina Bausch didn't ask her dancers to memorize steps at all.
Wait, really? No steps?
No. Instead, she asked them to remember. She wanted them to find, within their own bodies, the physical traces of everything that had ever happened to them. She treated dance not as a display of athleticism, but as a living archive of human experience.
That is wild. And the way she extracted that archive was intense, right? The source notes that her specific methods involved asking these simple, highly intimate, and sometimes really disturbing questions to her dancers and rehearsals.
Yes, very provocative questions.
Like the text specifically mentions she would ask them, show me what you do when you were afraid, or she would say, describe a childhood memory with your body.
What's fascinating here is that Bausch was intuitively tapping into something deeply neurological. When she asked those intimate questions, the dancers didn't answer with spoken words.
They're dancers.
And they didn't answer with rehearsed ballet positions either. Their answers were raw, involuntary gestures. She bypassed the cognitive filter entirely.
Oh, wow. So they weren't overthinking it.
Exactly. And those involuntary, honest gestures became the actual raw material that she built her choreography out of.
So if the dancers are communicating entirely through these raw, involuntary gestures, the choreography isn't about teaching them steps anymore. It's about triggering their psychology to see what the physical hardware does in response.
Precisely. Which leads perfectly to her defining quote. She stated this in Wepperall back in 1978. She said, I am not interested in how people move, but what makes them move.
What makes them move? That's powerful.
It changes the entire paradigm of movement, because how you move is just mechanics, right? Levers and pulleys.
Yeah, just bones and muscles doing their thing.
But what makes you move, that is psychology, history, and neurology all wrapped up in a physical action. She realized that you cannot separate a person's emotional history from their kinetic output.
So if artists were using this to bypass cognitive filters on a stage, it naturally begs a massive scientific question. Is this just a really beautiful metaphor for a theatrical performance? Or does the human body actually store memories like a biological filing cabinet?
Well, according to the clinical foundations presented in the Kinexa formation material, it is absolutely not just a metaphor.
Oh, okay.
The text explicitly states that this is a well-established clinical reality known as somatic memory.
Somatic memory, meaning we aren't just talking about motor skills, like muscle memory for riding a bike or typing on a keyboard.
No, much deeper than that.
We're talking about the body storing the actual weight of our lived experiences.
Exactly.
The text outlines 3 different mechanisms for how the body records this history: traumas, intense emotions, and repeated habits. Let's look at how this actually happens mechanistically. Because, for example, the source states that every single trauma leaves a trace in your muscle tone.
Yes.
Why? I mean, how does a muscle remember a car crash or a bad fall 5 years after the fact?
It comes down to your sympathetic nervous system, which controls your fight or flight response. When you experience physical trauma, your brain sends an immediate emergency signal to the surrounding muscles to violently contract.
Like bracing for impact.
Right, to protect a joint or a vital organ. But in cases of severe or repeated trauma, that neurological feedback loop gets stuck.
Wait, stuck? Like it doesn't turn off?
Exactly. The physical threat passes, but the nervous system fails to send the all-clear signal. So that specific muscle group stays locked in a low-grade state of defensive contraction. It's just constantly draining energy for years.
Man, that makes perfect sense for a physical impact. But what about the second mechanism the source mentions? Intense emotions.
Right.
The text explains that intense emotions permanently alter our breathing patterns. But here is where I get kind of stuck on the science of this. Our bodies are constantly regenerating, right? Cells die off and are replaced every few years. So how can a breathing pattern from a period of intense grief or stress a decade ago survive if the actual physical tissue of the lungs and diaphragm has completely turned over? Like, is this a software problem or a hardware problem?
That is the crucial question to ask. And it is fundamentally a software problem that permanently dictates the shape of the hardware.
Oh, interesting.
The cellular makeup of your diaphragm might be completely new, but the neurological blueprint instructing those new cells on how to fire is the old traumatized blueprint.
Ah, I get it.
If chronic fear taught your nervous system to take shallow, rapid breaths into the top of your chest to prepare to run, your brain literally wires that as the new default setting. Over time, that changes how your rib cage expands and how your diaphragm contracts.
Wow.
It is a temporary survival adaptation that became permanent architecture.
That is so crazy. Think about how you're sitting right now as you listen to us. Just take a second and notice it. Are your shoulders creeping up toward your ears? Are you taking shallow breaths right into the top of your chest? What is your current breathing pattern telling us about your stress levels today?
Yeah, it's all right there in the open.
It really is.
And those everyday unconscious positions lead right into the third mechanism, repeated habits. The text points out that every habit encodes postural strategies into the body.
Like slumping over a desk.
Exactly. The way you slouch over your laptop, the way you carry a heavy bag on the same shoulder for 10 years. The nervous system encodes these postures to make them more energetically efficient, which permanently alters your alignment.
Which perfectly aligns with the source's explicit reference to the work of Bessel van der Kolk and his famous clinical principle, the body keeps the score.
Exactly. Our physical form is mechanically molded by our emotional and physical history. Your posture is essentially the autobiography you didn't know you were writing.
Okay, so if the body keeps the score, the obvious question is, how do we actually read the scoreboard?
Right.
This is where the deep dive transitions from clinical theory into practical, high-stakes application. This is where Kinexa Formation's approach to sports performance really comes into play.
Because if we accept this premise, it means athletes do not arrive at a training session or a physical therapy clinic with a blank slate.
No, not at all.
They arrive with what Kinexa explicitly calls a postural history. These stories are encoded as active patterns in the nervous system.
And the presentation gives this incredibly specific example of an athlete's postural history to illustrate this. They list a right ankle sprain in 2019, chronic lower back pain since high school, and unexplained left shoulder tension.
Now, if a practitioner looks at that list through a traditional isolated medical lens, they see three completely separate problems requiring three separate
Yeah,
treatments.
you ice the ankle, you stretch the back, you massage the shoulder.
Right. But Kinexa introduces a vital paradigm shift here. They call it compensation as narrative.
Compensation as narrative.
Correct.
Explain the mechanics of that, because the source uses the example of a knee valgus, which is, for anyone who doesn't know, when the knee collapses inward during a movement, like a heavy squat or a jump landing.
Yeah.
A traditional coach looks at that knee valgus and labels it a deficiency. They say, your knee is weak, we need to do exercises to fix the knee.
Right. But the text argues the inward collapse isn't a deficiency at all. It is a highly intelligent compensation.
Wait, intelligent?
Yes. The knee is doing exactly what it has to do to keep the body moving forward because something else, somewhere else in the kinetic chain, is either failing or protecting itself based on that postural history.
Here's where it gets really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Because to me, this is exactly like having a leaky roof.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine water is actively dripping right into the middle of your kitchen floor.
Okay, yeah.
The traditional approach is to think, I have a kitchen problem, and you put a bucket down. Or maybe you try to patch the ceiling right above a puddle. But water travels.
It does.
The actual hole in the roof might be in the bedroom 2 rooms over, and the water is just running along a hidden support beam before it finally drops into your kitchen. Treating that knee valgus is just repeatedly emptying a bucket in the kitchen.
Exactly.
Kinexa isn't putting a bucket down. They are tracing the beam back to find the original hole in the roof.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the parallel to our avant-garde dancer is absolutely stunning.
Or Pina Bausch.
Yes. What Pina Bausch called "what moves me," meaning her quest to trace a visible physical gesture on a stage back to its hidden emotional root cause, is exactly what Kinexa is doing scientifically.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
They are tracing the causal chain. They look at the visible kinetic symptom like that collapsing knee, and they trace it all the way back through the body's compensations to its true source in the athlete's postural history.
Like an old ankle sprain from 2019 that threw off the hip alignment.
Precisely. The text literally describes Kinexa as the archaeologist of movement.
Which is such a vivid way to describe it. Just as an archaeologist has to carefully brush away the top layers of dirt to find the original artifact at the bottom, Kinexa has to brush away the surface compensations, the shoulder tension, the back pain,
Right.
to find the initial trauma or habit that forced the body to reorganize its posture in the first place.
It requires completely rethinking how we diagnose movement. You can't just treat the loudest symptom.
So we have these two completely different threads, the artistic, emotionally driven world of 1970s dance theater and the highly clinical, data-driven world of modern sports biomechanics.
Yeah.
The final section of the Kinexa presentation brings these two threads crashing together into a unified vision. They outline 5 essential resources that bridge this gap. But rather than just listing them off, let's look at how they actually interact in a real scenario.
Okay.
Let's take a hypothetical elite soccer player who comes in with that inward collapsing knee we just talked about. How does Kinexa synthesize art and science to treat them?
Well, first, the practitioner has to operate from the core clinical foundation, which is somatic memory. They look at the player's knee and acknowledge that this movement pattern isn't just a physics equation, it's a historical artifact. The body remembers something.
Right, and that history might involve severe physical or psychological injury, which brings in the second resource, trauma and the body, heavily referencing van der Kolk's work.
Exactly.
Let's say this soccer player had a devastating, career-threatening tackle 5 years ago.
And this is where we have to talk about the physical manifestation of that trauma. The presentation touches on physical roadblocks, which often exist in the fascia.
Wait, before we move on fascia, I know it's a massive buzzword in fitness and recovery right now, but what actually is it in this context? Are we talking about some kind of connective tissue acting like a net that physically traps these memories?
That is a remarkably precise way to visualize it. Fascia is a continuous three-dimensional web of connective tissue. It wraps around literally every muscle, bone, and nerve in your body.
Everything is connected.
Everything. So when the nervous system gets locked in that trauma response we discussed earlier, the fascia physically thickens. It dehydrates and it tightens to act as an internal splint.
Ouch.
Yeah. Even long after the emotional trauma of the tackle passes, that physical fascial restriction remains. It's a literal roadblock in the tissue that pulls the skeleton out of alignment.
So the practitioner uses the next resource, postural biomechanics, the hard math and physics of movement, to trace the compensation chain from the collapsing knee up through the hip to locate that hidden fascial restriction in the back caused by the old tackle.
Exactly. They map it all out.
But once they find that hysterical roadblock, how do they actually fix the software?
Through neuroplasticity, this is the fourth element and really the mechanism of hope in this whole philosophy. Because if the nervous system can learn a protective compensation, it can also unlearn it.
Right.
By using highly targeted conscious movement therapies, the practitioner is quite literally rewiring the motor control cortex of the brain. They're updating the software so the fascial hardware can finally release its grip.
And what I find so compelling is that Kinexa explicitly includes Tanztheater Dance Theater, honoring Pina Bausch's choreographic legacy as a core resource in this clinical process.
Yes. They don't just treat the body as a machine.
They aren't just looking at the athlete as a broken part to be mathematically recalibrated. They are using Bausch's artistic lens to remember the human element, to acknowledge the fear or the memory tied to that physical restriction.
It is the ultimate synthesis of disciplines. Art provides the empathy and intuition to see the athlete as a whole human being with a history. And science provides the rigorous biomechanical methodology to map and correct the physical compensations that history left behind.
So what does this all mean? When we look at this synthesis, what is the practical takeaway for the person listening to this right now, who probably isn't an avant-garde dancer or an elite soccer player?
The practical takeaway is that the fundamental truth of the human body does not change based on your profession or context. The tightness in your neck or the ache in your lower back isn't random, and it's not just a mechanical failure. Your body is operating on the exact same principles as the elite athlete. Your past is dictating your present movement.
It's universally applicable.
It really is. It makes you pause and reflect. What stands out to you when you think about your own body's history? When you feel that tension in your left shoulder, what is the underlying story your body is trying to tell you that you haven't been listening to?
It fundamentally shifts how you view yourself in the mirror. You aren't just looking at muscles and bones. You're looking at a deeply complex biological journal.
A journal, exactly.
To truly optimize your movement, to heal a chronic pain, or to perform at your best, you can't just treat the loudest symptom. You have to read the journal.
You have to honor the archive.
As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to return to the core message presented by Dr. Christophe Delong and Kinexa Formation in their ebook. It's titled The Visionaries of Gesture, Episode XD3.
Right.
The central thesis is undeniable. Our bodies are literal maps of everything we have ever lived.
And Kinexa distills this entire philosophy down to one incredibly powerful concluding slogan in their material.
Yeah, that slogan's going to stick with me. It says, simply, it is not how we move it, is what moves us.
It's a direct echo of Pina Bausch from 1978.
Reverberating across the decades to become the foundation of modern sports science. It's a vital reminder that beneath every single step we take, there is a hidden historical reason we are taking it exactly that way.
Which leaves us with the fascinating, if slightly unsettling question to ponder long after you finish listening.
Oh, yeah.
If our bodies are indeed living archives, constantly recording our traumas, our intense emotions, and our daily postural habits, what future memories are you unknowingly writing into your posture right now simply by the way you were sitting, standing, or breathing in this exact moment?